name's Barton Jennings. I'm sitting here on the Arkansas and Missouri Santa train slash pajama train down here in Van Buren, Arkansas today. I've been asked to just kind of explain a little bit of what I do with the railroad and some of the benefits that I try to provide. First off, I jokingly get called the historian of the Arkansas and Missouri because I've been tracking the history since my involvement, which actually began back in the mid-1980s as the railroad was started up. Recorded a lot of the events, researched the railroad, and actually have written and published the Arkansas and Missouri book called History Through the Miles, which provides a route guide for the entire Arkansas and Missouri, provides history of the route, what you're seeing along the route, things like that. I, for a living, worked in the industry, worked for Union Pacific, worked for the Arkansas and Missouri for a little bit, have actually trained or worked with people from more than 400 railroads across North America through my training through the University of Tennessee and elsewhere. I am a track person. I've worked in the maintenance of way area, track engineering, built bridges, railroad tunnels, things like that. Worked with the Federal Railroad Administration on writing some regulations and practices. So I'm very much involved in what could be considered the day-to-day behind-the-scenes operation. One of the things I'm very passionate about with the Arkansas and Missouri is that it's a real railroad. Get asked all the time if freight runs here. Well, this is a freight railroad. The passenger trains that you see that I'm sitting on today are just part of what the Arkansas and Missouri does. The passenger trains are kind of their goodwill, their outreach to the communities and to the citizens along the railroad. It also helps with a little bit of things like Operation Lifesaver, warning people about being safe around the tracks, at grade crossings, trespassing issues, things like that. It's a good way of doing public relations. And so I'm very passionate that people understand this is a freight railroad. It's one of the few in the United States that, as a true freight railroad, runs passenger trains on a very regular basis. Most passenger trains, excursion types that you see, are run by museums or small groups that may have a few miles of track or may lease the rights to run. But the Arkansas and Missouri is actually running their own passenger trains, and I'm very, very passionate about that, that they are willing to spend a lot of their own money to show off Northwest Arkansas and Southwest Missouri, show off the customers they have, the communities along the line, and things like that. So I'm very happy to be back in the Arkansas area working with the Arkansas and Missouri again on some of these passenger trains. And it's a beautiful day here in Van Buren. I'm very happy to be here and try to explain kind of what's going on here with the Arkansas and Missouri. One of the things I got asked today and have been for the last few days is what projects I have underway right now. One of them just finished having an article published in Railfan and Railroad magazine on U.S. sugar down in Florida. As I said, I do work with a lot of railroads across the country, and U.S. Sugar owns the South Central Florida Express, plus more than 100 miles of industry track which goes out into the sugarcane fields. So the November issue of Railfan and Railroad, I was asked to put together an article about that railroad. And that's out. I'm currently working, I actually have 5 books underway right now. The next one will be a book out on the Delta Heritage Trail here in the state of Arkansas. It's an old Missouri Pacific line in East Arkansas that's been turned into a trail. They're still finishing up, but that was actually part of my territory when I worked for Union Pacific in Southeast Arkansas. So it's another chance of going home. I've got a lot of the historic records and all, which is allowing me to work with the parks to get the book out. I have several books coming out on the Rock Island Railroad that will hopefully be out in 2021 or 2022. Plus, I have a book I'm working on the Iowa Northern, plus one on the U.S. Sugar down in Florida. So I stay busy as these books are coming out. I'm having different companies ask to have them put out for them. Some of the tourist railroads, like the Whitewater Valley, the Everett Railroad, and others that I've worked with in the past. I'm doing books for them also. So I try to put together books where people are interested, or where there's readers out there, or for companies that are interested in it. And we'll continue to put them out, 2 to 3 books a year until I can't write anymore. One of the questions I get asked a lot is how I got involved with trains. Where did my passion come from? I really don't know. My parents can't explain it. There's really no one in my family that's worked for the railroad industry. I joke probably some of them held it up many years ago, but there's actually two stories. They're both true. My mother gets embarrassed when I tell them, but when I was like 3 or 4 or 5, she had quiet hour every afternoon, and I was not considered a quiet child. I was rather active. And so one of the things she would do sometimes is set me on the back of the couch and push the couch up against the wall, so I was looking out the window at the trains there in Greenland, Arkansas, just south of Fayetteville. And so I joked that, hey, she brainwashed me. She forced me to watch trains, and so I got to love trains that way. Also, apparently about 3 or 4, I was very much in the trains and driving around the Fayetteville area. There's back 4 seat belts and all. I was standing up in the back seat, and I yelled train, yelled choo-choo. And my mom thought a train was coming, so she stopped. Well, I proved the law of physics worked. I went flying from the back seat, across the front seat, out the window, and onto the other car. So I joke it's brain damage. The last thing in my mind was trains. But seriously, I just like transportation. I like traveling. And it's not just railroads. Railroads are really my passion, but I also do barge work. I work with trucking companies. I've done some air. It's not my most favorite mode of transportation, but I do some air, even work with the pipelines. So I'm really a full transportation person. And out of that has come a couple of different projects. There's my History Through the Miles series of books, which are the histories of different companies. And the Arkansas and Missouri was the first of those. I've now got 10 of these books out and continue to produce books. And they're mainly about railroads, but I also have one out on canal system and all. I also have a 800-page book out on the basics of transportation, which explains contracts, routing, various costing, what the laws are, things like that. And this book is used not just by universities, but also by companies who use it to train their own employees and all. So I have this passion, but I consider it a very practical passion because I do work with the companies. I do consulting. I do talks at trade shows and conferences. I worked some legal things. I've worked court cases. I've even provided testimony to the U.S. Supreme Court. So I consider myself kind of a professional advocate, a professional rail fan, if you want to use the term. Professional foamer is what some people jokingly call me. But I'm very passionate about transportation. I love trains. And growing up here in northwest Arkansas, this Arkansas, Missouri, is just a real connection back home to me.